On today's show, Ryan Leonard has been named the NCAA's National Player of the Month.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Ryan Leonard and how he was named the NCAA's National Player of the Month. And you know what's interesting? If you're an everydayer of the show, that just yesterday I talked about how Andrew Crystal was named the WHL's Player of the Month for November. So it's interesting, 2 players that are going to be a big part of the Capitals' future, getting acknowledged as some of the best in the sport, and ultimately what is behind Ryan Leonard's recent success. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about Alex Ovechkin's progress. It's slow progress, but considering that he was injured not that long ago, for him to be skating around on the ice in his equipment, what is the latest on Ovechkin, and when can we expect to see him back? I'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about the Four Nations snub and what head coach Spencer Carberry made of the whole situation. But just to get it going here, talking about Ryan Leonard, and on this show, I've talked about him quite a bit as he fixes to be a big part of the Capitals. I'm going to go ahead and say next season, as we know that he wanted to play his sophomore season for Boston College because he wants to chase down another national championship. He wants to get another opportunity to play on the national stage. And I think it's turned out for the best. I mean, I think that, if you take a look at Leonard, he probably could have made the team this season. But I think that all things considered, just playing at Boston College, continuing to grow his game, that can be a really good thing. And that is what we're going to dive into in this particular episode about the standout performance about the Boston College men team in general, but with a particular spotlight on Ryan Leonard, who has been turning heads this past November, just making quite a statement. And if you take a look at it, Boston College is a bit of a hockey hotbed. Many big-name players have come out of that college that I think to develop at a school of that nature, I think is really helping take Leonard's game to the next level. And if you think about it, he's only 19 years old. Consider what kind of player he's going to be, let's say just even a couple years down the road. He could very well be one of the key pieces of the Capitals organization. And Ryan Leonard has really solidified his reputation as a phenomenal player. It's not just within the Capital circles. He is well known in college as one of the best. And like I said, named the NCAA's Player of the Month. Quite an accomplishment. The NCAA, very competitive, a lot of great players. For him to get that acknowledgement is really impressive. And, why? Why did he get that? It's all about the numbers he's put up. It's not about that Ryan Leonard's a nice guy. It's not that he's this or that. He can perform and can perform at the highest level. And if you take a look at him, an impressive tally of 13 points in only 9 games. 8 goals and 5 assists. Leonard has shown remarkable skill on the ice. That is why he got that acknowledgement. That is why he's going to be on the Capitals next season. And, it's going to be quite a year next season. If you think about it, it very well could be the last season of Alex Ovechkin playing professional hockey. And we'll also get, a brief 1-year snippet of what it's going to look like with the post-Ovechkin era, but then also with Ovechkin on the team for what could be his last year. So could you imagine the Capitals next season with Ovechkin, Crystal, and Leonard all playing at the same time? Next season is going to be one to remember. So notably, he enjoyed a career best 6-game goal streak and has scored 4 game-winning goals, including a memorable behind-the-back overtime winner against Providence. Has the skill set, has the flash that he can really impress. And if you get a chance, watch some of those games. They see broadcast on ESPN, if memory serves, but quite a performance that we have seen from Ryan Leonard this season. And this moment has undoubtedly stood out as a season highlight, that behind the back overtime winner against Providence. Again, I'll look it up. It's on YouTube. The guy is just, like I said earlier, phenomenal. And it's about dominance. And, one of the things about Ryan Leonard is he has a lot of the traits of an NHL player already. I've often dubbed him as, like a Tom Wilson 2.0. Has a big frame, a good skill set, a good shot, has a bit of grit to his game that I think in a lot of ways he could very well even be better than Tom Wilson at some point. Currently, though, Leonard is leading the NCAA scoring leaderboard with 11 goals and excels in shots on goal, averaging 5.9 per game. And also, why is he getting those goals is because he is peppering the netminder with a lot of shots. And, eventually those are going to find the back of the net, and has been the case for Ryan Leonard. With a total of 17 points in 14 games. He's not just a key player for Boston College, but also a top prospect, of course, for the Capitals. And, it's one of the things that former GM Brian McClellan said. It was around the time that we found out that Kuzi was going into the players assistance program. He did a presser, and for some reason someone asked a question about Leonard. What's the outlook for Leonard? And, at the time, BMAC said that he thought he was ready to go right now. But, he's going to be patient, and he didn't want to rush him. So I think in a lot of ways, like I said, he could be on the team right now. But how he is just dominating at the college level. And his talent, it's not just what he's done playing for the NCAA. His talent has earned him an invitation to Team USA's preliminary training camp for the upcoming World Juniors, perfectly aligning with his rise as a promising star. And it's one of the things about playing that well is you get acknowledged on that kind of level as just getting the opportunity to play for Team USA, training camp, that kind of thing. And what we've seen from him before playing at that kind of level in those kind of championship games, he has really impressed. But it hasn't been, all smooth sailing for Ryan Leonard, just like, a lot of NHL players. That it ebbs, it flows. There's ups, there's downs, and there's been some recent challenges for him as well. Oftentimes we like to cherry pick, and I sometimes do that on this show, the great data, like he's excelling on this, and a lot of goals, a lot of assists, a lot of shots on net. But sometimes it's about taking a look at things that need to get worked on as well. And it's worth mentioning that Leonard has faced a bit of a scoring slump in his last 2 games against Dartmouth and UConn. During a closely contested 2-1 overtime victory against UConn, he played without his usual line mates, James Higgins and Gabe Perreault. So that ultimately, I think, is probably what affected his performance. And, the good thing about it, him playing on the Capitals, is that I think no matter where he plays, he is going to be playing with some elite talent. Now, the question, of course, is where is a player like Leonard going to fit? How hard, it's going to be difficult to fit a guy like that of his caliber in the lineup. I'm kidding here. I think that, my knee-jerk reaction, like I've said on the show, is I think that Mangiapane plays this one season with the Capitals, and I think that Leonard would be a good replacement for that. You could make the argument that, where could he fit? He could play on the third line or the fourth line. I don't think a player of Ryan Leonard's caliber is really, I don't think that's what's best for him playing on the third or fourth line. What we want to see him is, I could see him playing with a Strome. I could see him playing with, a Tom Wilson, those kind of players like that, Pierre-Luc Dubois. And you think about it, just a line with, could you imagine a line with Pierre-Luc Dubois, Tom Wilson, and Ryan Leonard? And I know that Leonard is a forward and he can kind of play different positions. So I don't think that necessarily he's tied to a winger or a center, that he is versatile that way. But talking about Boston College, and it's not all about Ryan Leonard, but he is also essential to recognize other contributors from his teammates. James Higgins, who was named the Pro Ambitions Rookie of the Month with 11 points, including a standout game of 4 assists against number 10 St. Cloud State. Jacob Fowler, these are all players that you should be aware of that are on the rise, going to be big players in the NHL, has been stellar in goal, securing the Stop It Goaltending Goaltender of the Month title with a record of 6-1-0. Again, it's not all about Leonard. Leonard is a big part of that equation, of course, but when I just rattle off those names, and if you are a person that is about prospects or young and upcoming players, the names Jacob Fowler and those kind of players, James Higgins, should really jump out at you. So quite a bit, of great play that we've seen at Boston College, some really great players, and it's fun to watch these players mature and rise through the ranks. Now, looking ahead, Boston College prepares for the upcoming matchups against UMass Lowell and December 6th and 9th before the holiday break. All eyes will be on Ryan Leonard as he heads to Plymouth, Michigan to join Team USA. So a lot of excitement. And I know that this season, the Capitals are playing well, all things considered, that it's easy to be cap centric, but from time to time, take a peek, see what these upcomers are doing. Of course, I'll have them covered on this show, but take a look at Leonard, Crystal, these young players that are going to be a part of the Capitals' future, and just take a peek on what's going on. And, it's not even college. The Stingrays, some players there lighting it up as well, that it's a fun time to be a Capitals fan throughout the organization, whether it be prospects, whether it be the East Coast League, the American League. This team is really built to last, just due to good drafting, good development, that I think the Capitals will be in a really good position for years to come. All right, so coming up here after the break, I have been updating you this week with the progress of the grade 8 Alex Ovechkin, as he is making progress, and it's incremental growth, but considering that he wasn't injured that long ago, and to be on the ice in skates with equipment on, I'll break it all down next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, and there is a lot of football that's played on any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday, and some of those games you're into and some of them you're not. Open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on those games. All of a sudden, they got that much more exciting. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me, Dan, on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And I want to thank all of you for making Locked On Capitals your first Capitals listen of the day. So in this next segment here, we are going to talk about the progress of the great 8, Alex Ovechkin. And it's interesting. Like I've said, injured not too long ago, looked pretty doom and gloom like the end of the season. Not the case, as he is making incremental progress And that's what it's all about. You gotta learn to crawl before you can walk. You gotta walk before you can run. That is what Ovechkin is doing. And I've got some exciting news just from watching it. I'm going to go ahead and say it's exciting to see Ovechkin back on the ice again. And he doesn't look like he's wincing. He doesn't look like he's uncomfortable. He looks like he's doing very well. And he recently was spotted skating on his own before practice, fully geared up. That's exciting. As we know, I don't think that he wants to be out of the lineup for too long. Again, I don't think the 4 to 6 months, or excuse me, 4 to 6 weeks time frame has changed at all. But to just see him getting this kind of production this early, and when I say production, I'm talking about being on the ice after facing a major injury. Well, that is promising. And like I talked about just yesterday, he was engaging in basic skating exercises while wearing a non-contact jersey. This marks the second consecutive day he has been on the ice ahead of team practice. And us as fans are feeling optimistic about his progress. Because what's at stake? Chasing down Gretzky, helping the Capitals, that it is exciting to see him making his return. A lot of people are saying 39 years old, he's not going to be able to come back that quick, proving a lot of those people wrong. But talking about his current status now, while Ovechkin hasn't rejoined the team, of course, let's not get crazy here for on-ice drills yet. His ability to skate independently is promising. So again, everything in the world of Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals is pointing up, and a sigh of relief in a lot of ways, because when that injury happened, I'm thinking, it's a knee injury, it's a broken leg, a more impactful injury. As it turns out, having a broken left fibula is not as bad as it could have been. But we do know he suffered that broken left fibula just 17 days ago due to that collision with Jack McBain. My thoughts on it haven't changed. I don't think it was deliberate. I don't think it was dirty. It was unfortunate, and it was what it was. Now, fortunately, the thing, if we want to look at the medical aspect of it a little bit, is the fibula is a non-weight bearing bone. That's a good thing. I mean, I didn't know that beforehand. My wife's a nurse. I talked to her about that. That is how I kind of became aware of all of that. Now, Ovi has been able to walk and do light exercises during his rehabilitation, assisting in his recovery. And, it sounds funny that sometimes these injuries, it's better to put weight on them other than to just be held up, having your leg in the air and just not putting any weight on it. Certain injuries of this nature, it actually helps to put weight on it. So I know that Ovechkin has the best of the best doctors. He has the best of the best training staff. And it's good that he is making that progress. Again, the video footage that I've seen, he is skating, and it doesn't look like there's any holdup. It doesn't look like he's in any sort of pain. A lot to be excited about. Spencer Carberry, he was cautious about it as well, but also excited at the prospect of seeing him return to the lineup here relatively soon. Spencer Carberry has stated that Ovi's recovery is progressing as planned. So I don't think that he's, way ahead of where he should be. I think that to a lay person like myself, I thought he would be laid up, laying, with a cast on or something of that nature with crutches. The guy's out there skating. Can you believe it? So the next steps involve practicing with the puck and participating in team drills to gain repetitions before transitioning to contact practices. The one thing that we don't want to have is for him to rush. Take your time, Ovi. Just when you come back, we want you at 100%. We don't want to go, look back on it and go, why did we rush this whole situation? Now it's even worse. That's what we don't want. So the ultimate goal, of course, remains to get him back on the ice for games. And, if how he is progressing, how he's skating around in fairly short order, if that's any indication that maybe when he is ready to go in a game time situation, maybe he can pick up where he left off. There's not going to be that leg, because let's be honest here, if he does in fact want to catch and pass Gretzky this year, there is not going to be a ton of runway. So talking about that timeline, where he's at currently, we're still looking at that 4 to 6 weeks from the time of injury. However, there is hope that he might is what you're going to want to underline, return by the end of December. which, kind of seems like a long time away. But considering that there's usually about 4 games a week, it's not as bad as it sounds. Now, potentially hitting the shorter 4-week mark. You take a look at it, though. The team has been playing well in his absence. That is the good news. The Capitals still are eagerly awaiting Ovechkin's return, as he is a crucial member. Of course, he's the captain of the team at the end of the day. So, but even in his absence, the team is impressively leading the league in goals per game. And as I've said, as Alex Ovechkin goes, so go the Capitals. Well, as it turns out, this team is getting it done just based on the depth and the scoring and the additions that were made in the offseason. A lot to be excited about. And the thing of it is that Ovechkin was off to such a great season. There was a lot of fanfare talking about he's 39 years old. What kind of Ovechkin are we going to see? Put up 15 goals in short order, a hat trick in one game, 2 goals in the next game, then gets injured, was off to such a great start. Ovechkin did have an amazing start to his 20th NHL season with 15 goals in just 18 games. He is currently at 868 career goals and is only 27 goals away from breaking legendary Wayne Gretzky's all-time record. Can you believe it? You got to kind of pinch yourself that this is happening. Again, I don't think that Ovechkin set out to break this record. It just happened because he is, that good. So we're hoping that this progress continues as planned by the doctors and the training staff. And hopefully we can have Ovi back by the end of the month, because I think, of course, with Ovechkin on the ice, they have their best chance at winning games and scoring a lot of goals. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Spencer Carberry and his thoughts on the 4 Nations snub. There's no love for the Capitals, but at the end of the day, is it the end of the world that the Capitals are not participating in this? I'll discuss next. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. So yesterday, they announced the players for the 4 Nations series of games there. And what are my thoughts? And, why did the Capitals ultimately not have any players in the mix? The Capitals are in the first place in the Metro, number 1 in the Eastern. Why is there no love for the Capitals? And at first, my initial reaction to it was why? Why is there no love for the Capitals? And like everything else in life, there's 2 sides to every coin. One side of the coin is, the prideful part. My pride for this team is, why is there no Capitals players on the ice during this event that'll be in February? Why not? I feel like that there's no love for the Capitals. But the flip side of the coin is that the Capitals players that are dinged up, well, they'll be able to come back in a much better position. Now, I understand it's this series of games is still a bit away here, that I don't know who's going to be injured even at that point, but inevitably someone is going to be injured, that the Capitals will be in a much better position. And also, they don't have to risk injuring a player in a game that has little to no significance. I don't want to say there's no significance, because, just being chosen to be a part of these games in and of itself is an accomplishment. But could you consider a scenario, say that it was a Logan Thompson or a Tom Wilson or something of that nature, and they got injured, and you'd be thinking to yourself, the Capitals were doing so great. They were making a push for the playoffs, and one of their key players, Phil player, they got injured. So that is the flip side of the coin. So in any event, I don't like the optics of it, that there was no Capital player selected. But let's talk about that, and talk about the team's play here as of late, and talking about the 4 Nations face-off. Again, if you're not familiar, this is going to be replacing the All-Star game, because let's be honest, the All-Star break is kind of old hat at the end of the day. But in a surprising turn of events, none of the Capitals are going to be representing their countries at the league's inaugural 4 Nations face-off, scheduled for February 12th to the 20th. Can you believe it? And that, if you take a listen to podcasts out there, they're all lit up about all the players that were selected and this and that. Now I'm on the sidelines in my car at home listening on my radio, thinking to myself, why did none of these players get picked? But at the end of the day, it's all about, it's about just being acknowledged. At the end of the day, it's not about, I don't think it's going to take their careers to the next level, let's say. So talking about player omissions, one of the biggest shocks is Dylan Strome. We know what Dylan Strome means for this team, who has been absolutely lighting it up this season, leading in scoring, yet not on the roster. Take a look at what he means for the Capitals on the top line and his big contributions that we've seen thus far. Scoring goals, assisting on goals. We love Dylan Strome on the Capitals. But it's not just him. I think that Tom Wilson, Jacob Chychrun, John Carlson, all solid players with incredible contributions, were also overlooked. Why? I'm not going to try spinning my wheels any more than just to say they were. It's too bad. Now, Logan Thompson was one of the front runners. I thought definitely stood a chance of making this whole thing with a .913 save percentage, ranking second among Canadian goaltenders, adds to the confusion. And I want to hear, when this whole thing is done, how did they come to these conclusions and how the players were selected? The fans, the Capitals fans are especially baffled by Rasmus Sandin's exclusion from Team Sweden's lineup. A big blue liner, a guy with offensive flair. Where's the love? And as a standout defenseman leading NHL blue liners and goals above replacement, his absence is disappointing for his supporters and me. Again, I was hoping for Rasmus Sandin there as well. But Spencer Carberry had a unique take on it, and it's somewhat similar to my take and other people's take on it. Head coach Spencer Carberry expressed his thoughts on the situation, noting that the Capitals, alongside with the Seattle Kraken, are the only two teams not represented. Again, a bit conspiratorial, if you will. He finds it puzzling given the team's performance, as do we all. If this was a Capitals team that was lower in the standings, near the bottom perhaps, then I could see it. But what he said, quote, was, "I thought we had several players that had strong arguments and cases to be a part of the tournament and represent their country," Carberry said, unquote. And I do. I think that there's no real reason other than they weren't selected. And it's tough to see our players overlooked when they're performing at such a high level. So you're here to tell me that there's no Capitals players on this, but there are some from, say, the Columbus Blue Jackets or from the Pittsburgh Penguins or from the Buffalo Sabres. Put it in the calculator, hit equals. What do you see? Question mark. It makes no sense. So looking forward, Carberry acknowledged that the potential benefits of a break for our players, giving them a chance to rest and recharge for the second half of the season. And, there's also the general feeling that the team would have loved the opportunity to showcase their talents on the international stage. So that is that coin that I'm talking about, the heads and tails, if you will. It's too bad that they weren't selected, but since they're not selected, I'm going to make some lemonade out of these lemons and say it's good that these guys can get a chance to rest up and really hit the second half of the season with both barrels. So in any event, there's not a whole lot more to say about it. That it's too bad. That was Spencer Carberry's take on it. His take on it is a lot like my take. A lot of the other beat writers, their take on it as well, is that we don't get it. We don't understand. What do the Capitals have to do to be a part of this? Putting up great numbers, the best team right now in the East. Where's the love? And again, it doesn't make sense. And in your mind, you can spin your wheels and try to rationalize it, something that just truly doesn't make sense. All right. Once again, guys, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals and making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.